Disclaimer: the timeline presented in this video is entirely fictional and speculative. It is a creative work of fiction meant for entertainment and thought-provoking purposes only. None of the events, scenarios, or outcomes depicted are real or based on actual predictions. This video does not reflect the views or intentions of any real-world organizations, nations, or individuals. Viewer discretion is advised. Disclaimer: the timeline presented in this video is entirely fictional and speculative. It is a creative work of fiction meant for entertainment and thought-provoking purposes only. None of the events, scenarios, or outcomes depicted are real or based on actual predictions. This video does not reflect the views or intentions of any real-world organizations, nations, or individuals. Viewer discretion is advised. Disclaimer: the following is a fictional and speculative timeline of a hypothetical World War III scenario. It is purely a creative exercise and not a prediction or reflection of actual events. Detailed timeline of WI, 2026-A 2035 build-up to the conflict, 2026-A 2028, 2026. Tensions escalate as China asserts control over Taiwan through increased military presence and cyberattacks. Russia increases aggression in Eastern Europe, conducting large-scale military exercises near NATO borders. Iran accelerates its nuclear program, leading to heightened sanctions and regional tensions in the Middle East. North Korea resumes long-range missile testing, alarming global powers. 2027. NATO reinforces its Eastern European members, sparking confrontations with Russian forces. A cyberattack cripples critical infrastructure in the U.S., attributed to Chinese state-sponsored hackers. Skirmishes occur in the South China Sea between U.S.-led forces and Chinese naval units. Iran-backed militias intensify attacks on U.S. bases in the Middle East. 2028. Diplomatic relations between NATO and the Russo-Chinese alliance collapse. North Korea conducts a successful intercontinental ballistic missile (ICBM) test, claiming it can strike the U.S. mainland. A disputed border incident between NATO and Russian forces in the Baltics escalates into direct combat. Outbreak of World War III, 2029-A 2032. 2029, Russia invades the Baltic states, prompting NATO to invoke Article 5. China launches a full-scale assault on Taiwan, drawing U.S. and allied forces into direct conflict. Iran attacks Israel, leading to widespread Middle Eastern warfare. North Korea launches missiles at South Korea and Japan, starting a regional war. 2030, global conventional warfare engulfs Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. The war destabilizes global supply chains, causing widespread economic collapse and famine. NATO forces achieve a major victory by recapturing occupied Baltic territories. Chinese forces face heavy resistance in Taiwan but maintain control of key regions. 2031, a series of tactical nuclear strikes are initiated by Russia in Eastern Europe to halt NATO advances. NATO responds with precision nuclear strikes on Russian military installations. China and the U.S. exchange nuclear warnings but avoid direct strikes on mainland cities. 2032, a full-scale nuclear exchange occurs between NATO and the Russo-Chinese alliance, resulting in massive casualties and environmental devastation. Major cities like Moscow, Beijing, Washington, D.C., and Berlin are struck. Global temperatures drop due to nuclear winter effects, leading to mass starvation. Aftermath in NATO's terms, 2033-A 2035. 2033, with infrastructure and populations decimated, Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea begin to collapse internally. NATO implements relief operations in devastated regions but focuses on rebuilding its own nations. Global population declines by 20% due to war, famine, and radiation-related illnesses. 2034, Russia surrenders and agrees to NATO's terms, including complete disarmament and the establishment of democratic reforms. China faces a civil war, leading to the fragmentation of its government. Iran and North Korea experience regime collapses and are occupied by international peacekeeping forces. 2035, NATO establishes a new global order, emphasizing nuclear disarmament and international cooperation. Former adversaries are integrated into a new coalition under strict oversight. Humanity begins the long process of rebuilding from the greatest conflict in history. Casualties and destruction. Military deaths, estimated 200 million worldwide. Civilian deaths, over 1 billion due to war, famine, and nuclear fallout. Economic cost, $500 trillion in damages. Environmental impact, permanent damage to ecosystems. Nuclear winter leads to a decade-long agricultural collapse. Notice, the timeline you just listened is entirely fictional and does not reflect real-world events. It is a fabricated narrative for speculative and entertainment purposes only. 4.